Good afternoon. Welcome to Comentarios de Textos Americanos or American Text Commentary. My name is Miss Lilian Cañete. I let you hear a message in this space so you can text me here. This is my phone number. So we can make a WhatsApp group, right? So as you know, this is our virtual classroom from of your platform. Now we will talking about our lesson 1. So let's begin then. Right, let's start from the beginning. What is text commentary? Well, it's an intellectual activity in education in a discipline called social science or humanities. As you know, our discipline is stated in the humanity faculty. Okay, after reading a text, an interpreted text activity in itself comes commentary, which is very different depending on the methodology of the sign in question. In this quest, in this case, our case will be focused more literary essays and literature. Well, comment on literary text necessarily reflect the point of view of the commentator, his affiliation to a certain school of thought, his ideology, even his prejudice, and any kind of personal condition that implies some type of identification, such as nationality, social class, language, religion, race, etc. Or is it conditioned by its proximity or distance to the text you are commenting on? Before continuing, I would like to watch the next video where we can explore more about the commentary function is. So let's watch that.
Commentary is your analysis. It is your own interpretation of the sources, the passage, or the topic, depending on which type of essay you're writing. It's also important to understand that commentary explains how the evidence relates to or proves the thesis. So you need to have evidence in your essay, but you also need to have commentary. In fact, it's usually better to have more commentary than evidence. So if you think of evidence as the what, then the commentary is going to either be the how or the why. You want to explain the significance of your evidence. Now, how you do that varies depending on the essay, but here is a list of some helpful verbs. Now, some of these verbs can be used interchangeably, and they don't automatically guarantee that you're writing commentary, but these verbs have helped my own students strengthen their writing. In the next few slides, I'm going to show you some examples of how to use these verbs in both a synthesis essay and a rhetorical analysis essay. As you read these examples, remember that commentary is your own interpretation. You are going to need to make inferences and connections based on what the passage says. So your job with commentary is not to summarize or to repeat what is already stated, but rather to take it one step further and examine the significance of what's in the passage. So here are two examples of how you can use the word suggest in a more effective way. A lot of times students want to use the verb shows, which is not quite as high level as the verb illustrates. So if you are working on amplifying your commentary, working in verbs like illustrates can help you figure out the significance of that evidence that you're trying to explain. So here are two examples of how to use illustrates. I also listed two synonyms up there, demonstrates and represents. Those are also good verbs that you could use as well. For those who are looking to improve your syntax or your sentence structure, go ahead and take note of the second example. There's a dependent clause at the end of that sentence that says creating an intimate and reverent tone. And so that's a way to not only add on another layer to that sentence, but it's also a way to work in the tone without having to say the tone is reverent, because that's not as fancy. If you find that you're using the verb illustrates too often in an essay, a good backup to have is highlights, because sometimes the verb highlights can be used in place of the verb illustrates. So here is an example of how to use that in both a synthesis essay and a rhetorical analysis essay. This next verb is one that I tend to see less frequently in essays. However, it is a good one to know, and that is signify. So it means indicates, and here are two examples of how you might use this verb in a more effective way. Another verb that I tend to see less frequently in student work, but a verb that is very helpful if you're trying to develop your commentary, is the verb exemplifies. While I do believe it is helpful to not only know which verbs help to develop your commentary, but also to see how those verbs can be used properly, I think there's another layer to understanding what commentary is. And so what I've done here is I've included a sample paragraph, and I have put some sentences here that are in red and they're bolded so you can see the difference here, because these are sentences that as a teacher would stand out to me as being effective commentary. So these are not really about the verbs that are being used, but rather what is being conveyed through that commentary. So if you want to take a second to pause the video and just read this paragraph, you can, because I think sometimes it's helpful to see what commentary looks like. That way you know what you're supposed to be doing as you actually write an essay. If you are relatively new to AP Lang, this body paragraph is from a rhetorical analysis essay. And some of the things that I bolded here are elements of the rhetorical situation. So if you're curious what that is, I did make a couple other videos about that, so I will be sure to link them above. That way you can figure out exactly what to comment on if you're trying to develop your commentary. If you're looking for different ways to improve your commentary, here are some suggestions. The first thing I would do is to highlight your work. So what I have my students do is I will either have them highlight their claims or I will have them highlight their thesis, because remember, your evidence and commentary are supposed to prove your thesis. In a different color, I'll have them identify their evidence, and in a third color, I'll have them identify their commentary. So if they highlight it properly, if they've written a paragraph the way I want them to, whatever color their commentary is the color that I should see the most frequently on their paper, because the goal is to have more commentary than evidence. I would also want to see the colors alternating, because we don't want to have a big block of evidence and then a big block of commentary. We want it to be layered. And so color coding helps you visually see what you're considering commentary and what you're considering evidence. If you struggle with identifying evidence and commentary, though, this might not be the best exercise for you. So something else that you might try is you might look at some release samples from the College Board. I would start at maybe a 3 out of 6 if you're looking at the new rubric, and I would work my way up to maybe a 5 out of 6 or a 6 out of 6 if you want to. Sometimes looking at a perfect score 6 out of 6 can be really intimidating though, so just kind of keep that in mind. And what I would do is I would look at the essay and I would try to identify what I think is commentary, and then I would look at the scoring notes and I would try to figure out why that essay received the score that it did. Because if evidence and commentary are 4 possible points on the rubric, you need to know what readers are looking for. And I'm a very visual learner myself, so I would like to see a model of that. So I would look at the essays that have been scored using the 6-point rubric. There are some out there on the old 9-point rubric, and it's not that those aren't valuable, but if you're working for the current exam, I would look at the 6-point rubric just so you can see exactly how you will be evaluated. So as you are reading these release samples from the College Board, I would try to note what you think is effective and ineffective about each of the essays. That way you can start to figure out what you want to emulate and what you don't want to emulate. The last thing I might recommend is talk to your teacher or a peer and have them highlight for you what they think is your effective commentary, and then have them point out a couple of places that might be less effective. That way you can know what is resonating with your reader and what is not. So you can keep doing the things that are working well, and then you could try to fix and avoid the things that are not working well. Now, if it's the beginning of the school year when you're trying to do this, I might not do this exercise right away, but it is something that you can consider as you're working through your AP Lang year. Another variation of this is, instead of looking at the College Board samples, if you have a friend who's receiving strong scores in evidence and commentary, and it's something that you're struggling struggling with, you might ask that peer if you could look at their essays just so you can kind of compare your work to theirs. You might even ask them if they could explain their thought process to you, because to be honest, sometimes peers explaining it to peers works better than a teacher trying to explain it to a student. So learn from your peers if you can, and learn from different models. That way you know what to do when you're actually writing your
Excellent.
own essay.
So the previous video was very helpful to understand what a commentary is. So let's move on. This section said comments can address complete literary works, fragmental works, or anthologies, and include a description of text, as we were mentioning minutes ago. So therefore, they can give rise to new commentary research, hypothesis to study discuss work from different perspectives. This will be very important for them. Right. Let's review what the video was saying. So I decide to show part 1, part 2, part 3 about starting the literary commentary. Let's begin with part 1. Number 1. Read the passage several times. This is something we have to do, and is obviously a very important activity to start the commentary. So start by reading the passage once out loud to yourself and once in your head. First one loud, secondly in your head. Take the time to read each word and each sentence slowly. It's important to do this slowly. This will help you get in the mindset of analyzing the text and ensure you understand each detail of the text. Of course, you have to make sure you have a hard copy of the passage so you can mark up as you read it. Step number 2, highlight keywords in the text. Take a pen, pencil highlighter, and mark any words that feel important in the text. Remember, look for words that are bolded or italicized in the text, as this likely means they're important for the author and key to understanding the text. You may also highlight words like this that you do not understand or have a question about. You can then discuss this term in your literary commentary. Also, look for words that are repeated in the text, as this means they are likely important. Notice if the same word is used in a different context in the passage and highlight each mention of the word. This is a very easy step, so move on to step number 3, create an outline. Literary commentaries follow a very simple outline and, unlike an essay, do not require speaking about essay. In the next lesson, we'll be talking about different about essay and commentary, right? Okay, let's come back here to not require this statement. Instead, you should analyze the structure, content, and form of the provided text in detail. So, the outline should look like introduction, change the color, introduction section, where we can find or identify the text, the body section. We can discuss the main feature of the text, and of course, the conclusion section when we summarize our thought on the text. So we can plan our commentary like this: introduction, plot, speaker's character, format of the poem. This is more similar to the previous video we were watching. Format of the poem, the truth divisor, reading a word, choice, rhyme, effect on the reader, and of course, the last one is the conclusion. Right. These were the part one, so now start with the part two. The part two implies the writing. So writing literary commentary. This is a very important part or step because in this section we can actually do like an investigation. Why? Because we're identifying the title, the author, the genre, and the introduction. So let's say this is an investigation part. Begin a literary commentary by noting the basic detail of the text. Say the title, author, the publication, and genre of the text. This should appear in your introduction section. You can also mention at what point in a larger work the passage occurs if relevant. So in short words, identify the title, author, and genre in the introduction. This could be a very good example. Published in 1966, Seamus Heaney's Blackberry Picking is a poem that appears in his poetry collection, The Naturalist. It's a very specific example. If the text is from a large work, do not write about the overall plot of the larger work. You should also not include from the author's biography or the historical period when the text was written, unless it feels relevant to the passage. Don't forget about it. Step number two: discuss the text subject, themes, on audience. When every time we find this word discuss is likely to understand, it's kind of be relative to our opinion. So discussing, you should know, is referring to opinions. Well, let's go back. Let's go to text subject, themes, and audience. In the body paragraph, think about what the text is about. Is remember like um, finding the main idea of every paragraph. Who or what is the text focusing on? What are the main ideas in the text? What is the overall purpose of the text? And of course, who is the text written for? For example, in Seamus Heaney's poem Blackberry Picking, the subject is two people picking a large quantity of blackberries. The themes of the poem could be nature, hunger, and decay or rot. The poem begins with a dedication to Philip Hobson, which means he could be the intended audience of the poem. The you addresses in the poem. So let's see the example. Identify the text major element. For example, theme, topic, subject. The big picture subject of poem Blackberry Pig is about two people picking, as we said before. Audience purpose, dedication of Blackberry Pinking to Philip Hobson indicated that he, along with the general public, for whom Hindley publishes, might be the audience of the poem. Purpose of the poem may be Hindley wishes to reflect on the innocence of youth while lamenting the nebulous passage of time. This is very deep, this part, because we have to analyze, um, give our own opinion. Boys. Blackberry picking is written in the first person and is often plural, as there appear to be two characters in the poem. The speaker seems to be an older gentleman reflecting of his blackberry picking days of youth. Now we are going to part 3. Look at the genre, form, and structure of the text. Remember, as I said before, this is like an investigation. So, in part 2, we were talking about discuss opinion. Part 1, identifying the title, author, and genre. So, the investigation is in course. The genre of the text is tied to its form or how it appears on the page. Is the text a poem, a piece of prose, or an essay? Does the text fit in a specific genre, such as fiction, non-fiction, poetry, that written, or memoir? So look at the genre, form, and structure of the text. Example: Seamus Heaney's Blackberry Picking. Form and structure. It an open form poem made of two irregular stanzas. Genre. It fits in the genre of poetry. The genre and form of the text will also help you determine the structure of the text. For example, Seamus Heaney takes from the form of the poem and fits the genre of poem, as we said before. It uses a familiar poetic structure such as short line of text and is broken in two stanzas. Now we go to part 4. Analyze the voice in the text. For example, Seamus Heaney's Blackberry Picking voice. The speaker uses the first person voice. The speaker then addresses a you in the text, indicating there are two characters in the poem. Well, ask yourself, who is speaking in the text? Identify the speaker or narrator in the text. Then think about how the voice of the text is reflected in the word choice, the language, and the diction of text. For example, this is the first voice, first person voice in the poem. Now we are going to part 5, step 5, study the tone and mood. Always we are going to have an example with the poem of Seamus Guinness. Tone and mood. The tone in the first stanza is nostalgic and light. Light, it could be soft in a softly way, right? The tone then shifts in the second stanza to be more serious and dark. And of course, dark is the opposite of light. Dark is will be more. How can we explain? We can say dark is more. Is deeper. Is obscure. Maybe is talking about um, danger, etc. So the tone of the text is how the author expresses their attitude in the writing. The tone may shift or change throughout the text, such as moving from a light-hearted tone, softly, remember softly, to a serious tone, or from a friendly tone or a sinister tone. There is a very good synonym to dark, sinister. It should express through the diction, the point of view, and the word choice in the text. Tone also reflect the mood of the text. The mood is the atmosphere of the text, or how the text makes you feel as you experience it. So, in the first paragraph, the first stanza is touching the light, and then shift to more serious and dark. In the step 6, We identify illiterate devices in the text. For example, one of them is the symbol you are the first one and its flesh was sweet, like thin wine, summer's blood was in it. Then we have imagery, a recreate fungus, first fermented. Don't forget literary devices like metaphor, similar imagery, and alliteration are often used in writing to deepen the meaning of the text. If you notice any literary device in the text, discuss them in the literary commentary. Name the literary devices and use them to discuss key ideas or themes in the passage. You can find a complete list of literary devices in literature online. You know, online there are everything. Step 7 include quotes from the text. Example: Kinney creates an effect by using sensory images such as summer bloods and regular fungus. The author makes choices about the inclusion or exclusion of a specific element into the work. Use quotation mark to note when you are quoting the text directly. Like this. Only include quotes that will support your discussion of the text. Like very picky, you may quote a line like, I always felt like crying. It wasn't fair that all the lovely counsels email or wrote. So move on to step 8. Wrap up the commentary with a summary of your thoughts. Let's go back to our example. To conclude, Heaney uses the premise of blackberry picking as a metaphor for nevertheless passing of time and loss of useful innocence. That extends the content of the poem from just blackberry picking to a larger life lesson. In the literary commentary with a brief conclusion that reinforces your main points about the text. Discuss the relevance of the passage within the larger work. Restate your main ideas about the text, but do not add new information or new thought in the conclusion. Remember, the conclusion is when it's finished, so it's not necessary you are talking about new ideas. That that is what is meant to be here. So we are finishing, going to the part 3, polishing the literary commentary. There are some steps, one, two, three. The first step said read the commentary aloud to yourself. Once you have completed draft, the literary commentary, read it back to yourself aloud as we are doing in the first part. Listen for any sentences that's awkward or long-winded. Revise any confusing or tabular phrases. Make sure each sentence is clear and easy to understand. Of course, don't forget to use technical words. You can also read the commentary aloud to someone else to get their feedback. As a peer, friend, family member, this part is especially doing with us, classmates, or teacher to ask for their feedback. In the step 2, we can confirm the commentary follows a clear outline. How to do that? Well, confirm the commentary follows a clear outline. We have the intro, the body, and the closing. The closing is our conclusion. For example, this is analysis of Edgar Allan Poe's follows House of Usher. Intro: the House of Usher ultimately falls because of the unnatural interdependence between brother and sister. Body: Madeline is Roderick's sole companion for a year, which is important because even the narrator, despite being friends with Roderick, knows next to nothing about him. The two have confirmed themselves inside the family home in a sort of trap from which there is no escape. The two must stay together just as the mirror image of the house seen in it can exist without the house itself. Roderick and his sister are two halves of the same whole and can exist without the other. Roderick himself seems to realize that will perish in his birth folly, which is potentially a reference to the observed and inescapable interview with his sister. Even if he attempts to break free of his relationship by locking his assumed to be dead sister in the family crypt still closet. However, he has already reached a point where he attempts himself enough to cause the fall of his own being as well as the house or family line of Usher. To do this, you can try making a reverse outline using the commentary as a guide. Make sure the commentary has a clear introduction, and we see here body and conclusion section. Confirm it follows your original outline. You can go through the commentary and write down introduction or discussion of text as we notice here to the relevant part of the commentary. Doing this will ensure you cover all the necessary information in the commentary. So we are ending with step 3, review the commentary for spelling, grammar, and punctuation. This is very important. Try reading the commentary backwards, focusing on each word to ensure it is spelled correctly. Circle the punctuation marks in the commentary and ensure you use them correctly, such as period at the end of every sentence or a comma between words when needed. Don't forget to measure a paragraph. We have sentences, but the sentences have to end in a point. If your sentences have a lot of comma, please read again and try to put dots or points in there. If you're using a computer, I'm sorry, to write literal commentary, you can use the spell check option in the computer program. This is so easy. However, you should not rely on spell check only to throughout your work. Make sure you also do a close review of the commentary for any error before you hand it. Right. So this is how to do. We also had view some concepts, some devices. Now let's go to our activity. We have for lesson 1 and I used to I would like you to answer please these questions. There are just 3 questions. Number 1, how can text commentary reflect the personal background and biases of the commentator? Number 2, what are the key components of a well-written text commentary according to the guideline provided in our PDF file? PDF file, this. Don't forget to watch the video again. And number 3, how can text commentary readers help readers develop the critical sense when approaching literary works? Right. So we have a from lesson 1. I would like you to please try to answer this question. Is basically read again this PDF file. Also, you can watch again this video. And we'll see you in lesson 2.